We had put it on the planet. It's been a long time. We should have never demonstrated, but we standing on the front line, prime for the sequel. Part two will rock you, the voice of the people. We had to take it back, shake it up, and rearrange it. The industry's evolving, now we rolling with the changes. Black, Bobby, Mac, Josh, Brian, and Mary. Come to take over the planet. Make some noise if you hear me. The planet is back. The planet is back. The planet is back. The planet is back. Oh. The planet is back. The planet is back.
Yeah. Come on, everybody. Welcome. The planet is back. It's your boy, live from Platypus Studios right here. It's Josh Fiore, a.k.a. J Fuego, Spitfire King. With me, as always, is Alaska Galore's #1 fan, Bobby Mack. Hey, Bobby.
What's going on, brother? Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. And DJ Platypus here with a very special episode today. Isn't that right, Plat?
That's right, Josh. Thank you. Today we're going to get a little political, which is something that we never do here at the Planet Platypus show. We brought on a very special guest, and Angelina Spencer is here with us today. You're in Clearwater area right now? You're in Florida?
I'm in Florida. I'm in Naples, Florida right now.
Awesome. And before we get started, just for our guests listening, Angelina, give us a little background, maybe your title, what you've done, and kind of what you do for the industry. Just a quick background of what you do.
Okay, so I'm the executive director for ACE National, which is the federally registered trade association for the adult club industry. We've been around since 1999, and some of the things that I do vary from handling legislative bill tracking to meeting with politicians to plan strategy. And we do this through a DC-based firm where I'm the CEO, and we have other clients too. We have military, we've worked with military, government, federal agencies, and then the private sector as well as NGOs. Right, and this isn't your first time on the show, of course. We've had you as a reoccurring guest for the last 10 plus years since we've been doing the podcasts. And we've had some amazing funny moments with you. And then there was even a time, Bobby will remember this, the time you brought your children into the studio. And we were able to grill you on your past endeavors before you became the legal mind that you are today. So basically, I want to get things kicked off a little bit. First, I kind of want to go around the horn and see how everybody's doing. But I'm going to make a quick announcement about my current situation. On Monday, the 6th of July, I had gotten tested for the COVID-19. And on Thursday this past week, I got my results back as being tested positive. Now, fortunately for me, I've had very little to no symptoms at all. I thought I was dealing with some allergies. It turned out, that it, in fact, was COVID. I had a hard time with my senses, smelling and tasting. But other than that, I did not have any other issues. Now, Bobby, I know you got tested. What's your current status like?
I do not have the Rona. I got both blood tested and nasal swab. Both were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But no antibodies, so I've never had it or any form of it yet. With my luck, it's just coming. I'm just going to get that zombie strain that's waiting for us, 3 months away. That's the one I'm going to get.
Yeah, and your wife actually works with the elderly here in Florida, correct? So.
Yeah, and so her environment is super strict, super clean. They're one of the only assisted living facilities that don't have a case. Have never had a case. But the difficult thing, not to get into it, but those people go in and out of the hospital all the time. These people, they're of senior years. So any given day, 4 or 5 of them have to go to the hospital and come back, go to the doctor and come back. And that's where all the danger comes from. They don't, allow deliveries or anything right now. Everything is very, very double checked and triple checked. But yeah, if Cindy got it, then she couldn't come back to work for at least 14 days plus. So yeah, it's scary.
It is definitely scary. And Josh, where are you at?
Yeah, I also was tested positive, my son and I, but same as you, just very light symptoms, lost the taste, lost the smell for a while. And other than that, mostly like sinus infection type symptoms for a couple of weeks, and then, then fully recovered. So I got it out of the way.
And Jake, I don't think I really need to ask because you really never leave your house to begin with ever. So I don't think you've left your house since the Clinton administration. But Jake, what's going on with you, man? And how is your lovely significant other doing as well?
She's fine. I mean, Chloe leaves the house. She still has to go to work. And, she works at Amazon now. So she encounters a lot of people there, but they're taking a lot of precautions. And the area of the country that we're in really hasn't been hit that hard.
Well, you're in Georgia, correct?
North Georgia, up towards the mountains. So I haven't been tested, but I haven't had any symptoms. And I don't leave the house. So, I mean, I think since April, maybe left the house 5 or 6 times just for some quick groceries, or that's it. But, most everything gets delivered by Amazon or some other grocery service. So I'm just here in the bunker, hiding out.
Good deal. Well, I'm glad everybody's doing well. I mean, considering 2 of us have tested positive, we're still functioning just fine. I don't want anybody worrying about a health scare as of this moment. Like I said, I did get exposed to somebody who tested positive well over 2 weeks ago. And that, in fact, 2 weeks ago is when my taste and smell went away. As of right now, my taste and smell is back 100%. I know I spoke to Josh yesterday, and he said the same thing.
We're back.
But I want to start a conversation. We have Angelina here, and, this is an industry-based show, and we do this podcast for and about the adult nightclub industry. And I just want to say, me personally, I'm scared. And I think it's okay to say that I'm scared. I'm scared of this virus, but I'm more terrified of the politics that are going around this virus that are closing down an entire industry. And I'm scared for the people in our industry and just some of the unbelievable, unfortunate things I've heard, like people that are living in their cars right now, people that are being on the verge of getting kicked out of their rental property or their mortgaged property, people selling their homes just so they can live for the next 3 to 4 months on the equity that they've built up over their hard-earned work lives. I'm scared, and I think that's an important thing to state, that even the leaders in our industry go through the same fear and are scared the same way that everybody else is. It's very cliche. Starting in March, everyone said, we're all in this together and we're going to get through this. And you hear all those cliches, but I really want, just on a state of mental awareness, I just want to say out there and start the show out with this thought. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be a little fearful of what's going on. This has never happened in our lifetime. And if you're having any thoughts of negativity to the point where it's distracting you from thinking clearly, reach out to me personally. Reach out to Angelina. Reach out to Bobby Mack. Reach out to Josh. Reach out to Jake. We are all in this together, non-cliche, meaning 24/7, my phone line is open to anybody. You can reach me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of the social media platforms. You can contact us directly at our website, planetplatypus.com, which Jake runs, and he will make sure that anybody that contacts through any of our channels through the website, one of us will get back to you and talk to you. Even if you just need to talk and say, hey, I'm scared too, and I don't know what to do. It's not that I can help you or Angelina can help you in a financial matter. There's certainly no way I can get people back to work any sooner, but we are in this together in a mental and physical capacity. And I just want to start the show out by saying that. And now we're going to talk a little bit about not only the mental things that are going on and the mental awareness that we should really be focusing on, as well as some of the political things that unfortunately Angelina is dealing with on a daily basis. So I'm going to kind of kick it over your way, Angelina, and just kind of start with, take us back into March when all this kind of started and the big shutdown happened. And what was your strategy going into the shutdown? And how far have you gotten with that strategy based on the pushback you're getting from the politicians, just in regards to our industry?
Well, I want to back up a little bit and
Sure.
and provide more information on what you just said about we're all in this together and the mental health aspect. I too am scared. And it's not just the adult industry. There are a whole host of industries that are impacted right now. My thing is numbers. So part of the work I do as a consultant is data analytics. But outside of that, I also used to work as a psychiatric assessment specialist. So my phone has been ringing sometimes at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to address the very legitimate concerns of industry workers and also owners. So everybody's under a lot of pressure right now. However, the positive things that I have seen are people that are coming together for one another, whether it's to lend an ear or a shoulder, or even in some cases, I do know of club owners who have raided their retirement savings in order to help the workers at their clubs. So back to your question regarding strategy, back in March, I don't think that any of us, if you go back and consider this, the virus hit, and I think that the first feeling we all had was we were stunned. And I mean the US across the board, we were stunned. I had never seen, and I don't think any of you had ever seen, a situation in which the entire economy was shut down by our government. And that sent chills through me because I thought, what are we dealing with? So all those things go through my head on who screwed up, who really screwed up, and you start thinking, where did this originate? Once we got off that, then we thought, all right, they want to close this down for a couple of weeks. But as I was talking with people in DC and around the country, elected officials, I started realizing nobody had a plan. Our elected officials didn't have a plan. It was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to something that they were told was going to decimate the US population. So with that said, their plan was no plan, and they shut down the economy. Then they had the knee-jerk reaction to do a stimulus package. But I don't know about you guys, how's that $1,200 working out for you?
Well, it's not, because here in the state of Florida, even getting
went by pretty fast, if you ask me.
But a lot of us couldn't even get on the website. Josh had to actually go through Rhode Island, where he just moved from.
No.
No?
Yeah.
You didn't? Oh, I thought you did. Oh,
no.
My point is, it's impossible to get through the website right now. And in some cases, it's taking days and weeks for people to get through. So not everybody is getting that money that they're promised.
So rather than lament on all that, let's go back and I sort of dragged you, I was a little tangential there, but let me bring you guys back to strategy. So what we were looking at was we were looking around for answers. But then we had immediate closures going on. So everyone's in shock, everyone's stunned, everyone's thinking, okay, it's 2 weeks. But then the word I started to hear is, well, we told people 2 weeks, but it's probably going to be a month. And then it was. And then they kept moving. If you notice at the very beginning, back in March, everything sort of moved in these 2-week increments. Because if I tell you, look, for the greater good of humanity, you have to shut down for 2 weeks, most of us are going to say, we're compassionate people. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. 2 weeks. But when they drag that out and we're now going into month 5 and there's no end in sight, and one of the biggest irritations and frustrations is that we don't have any concrete answers to when we will be open, not just at full capacity, but at limited capacity. So then you add this ad hoc piecemeal reopening, closing again, and that gets extraordinarily frustrating for everybody in our industry who just wants to be a productive American citizen and pay their bills. But we also have to strike this balance between a virus that is deadly to some people. We have to strike this balance between a deadly virus and keeping people employed. And that's where I think our political leaders are kind of, they don't want to do anything wrong. And I liken it, and I've said this to you before, Plat, about how it's like elected officials are all lined up in the horse gate and the bell goes off and nobody runs for the finish line. And they all say, you go first. No, I'm not going first. You go first. And part of that is based in politics and the fact that this is an election year. And the other part is a gross misinterpretation of data. Florida is a great example of that. So I just learned right before I jumped on this phone call that, they were saying Florida is at like 98% positivity rate, and Orlando Health had a 98% positivity rate over the weekend. But when you do a little digging on their numbers, the positivity rate is only 9.4%, not 98%. And, and the health department now is having to answer for the mistakes that were made. And it wasn't just in Orlando. So this to me is a state or somebody at the Florida Health Department screwing with the numbers in order to incite a panic. And then, but the problem with that is those people are probably still earning a paycheck. And when they're fudging with the data, it's keeping you guys from working. And
right.
That's not
a mistake or an error. That's ridiculous. From 90% to 9% that's
a 91% discrepancy for positive COVID cases is fucking unacceptable.
It's criminal.
Wow.
It's unacceptable. So
what can we do to combat something like that?
So here's what we're doing. So we have some places that are sort of open, a lot of places that are closed. So when I have to wrap my arms around 50 states, and it's not impossible. I don't like to believe things are impossible, but now I have to go look at their state fiscal shortfalls, and we've been pairing them with safety protocols. Now, that safety protocols during a pandemic, that's not my expertise. It's not my wheelhouse. So I went out and found 2 experts. One is an anti-biowarfare safety expert. The other is an epidemiologist. The former served on the National Academy of Sciences. The latter, who is Dr. Tim Davis, is an epidemiologist that was an Air Force captain, and he also served as an Undersecretary of Health for the United States. So I had been working on an anti-human trafficking foundational effort with those gentlemen, but I noticed that they were working with Army Material Command on safety protocols against the pandemic. So in other words, if you've got a barracks full of soldiers, how are you going to protect them against a virus? They're sharing a communal environment. Well, then I noticed that those casinos had reached out to them, the big casinos, and so I went to them and I said, could you help the strip club industry? And initially there was a little bit of chuckling, but then they realized, well, they're human beings too. And I said, look, we need help here, or I fear that these clubs will not be open. So the one thing that we have realized is we got the safety protocols in place. In some cases, it was a great thing that we did that, because some places were not allowed to open unless they had a protocol, and not just their club plan, but an industry-wide plan. And that's what some state officials and some county officials are expecting from the industry. There are a lot of club owners, and I have to give them credit, because one thing that we're really good at is we're mavericks and we're early adopters, and we're also influencers, no matter what the general public might say. So we have a contingent of people who are very, very open to making these changes in order to keep their staff, their dancers, and their patrons safe, or as safe as possible. The one thing I need to say is, if there is an interaction of people or a coming together of people, the experts did tell me, you will not eliminate risk in any club. The best you can hope for is to minimize risk as much as possible. But it's not just clubs, that's any industry, any industry. So that being said, and the fact that we're under so much scrutiny, it's now kind of come to this, we need to do it better than anybody else. And then we need to start asking our states, what is your science behind keeping us closed? If a restaurant can be open, and by the way, people tend to sit longer in a restaurant than they usually do at a club.
Sure. And it's a more intimate social environment too. You're sitting at a table across from somebody.
With no mask.
Yeah.
Because you can't eat without a mask, and you're sitting there. So now we're starting to, now it's, how can we do it better than anybody else? Well, you find the experts to sign off and certify on things like your ventilation system. So we've encouraged, and we have a couple of club owners in the Carolinas who are actually going to their local food processing plants and their local hospitals. What is your ventilation system? We want to do it better. And so in other words, you're eliminating every excuse that an elected official has to not open you by saying that you're less safe than a restaurant. So that's, you know, that's part of it. And then actually doing it, then actually following through and allowing your air quality to be tested and allowing the masks. I get it. I know people don't like it. I've talked to people who fold their arms in front of me and say, I want you to open us up like business as usual. What are you doing to get yourself open? Because that's what it's going to take. And that's what I ask people. But on the flip side, I'm also talking with politicians, so elected officials all over the country, and I'm learning what other industries are doing. And I'm talking with people that are in other industries in the private sectors, concert venues, the arts, the theater, because man, were they impacted very, very hard. So you have a bunch of stagehands, makeup artists, actors, actresses, all the concert venues, musicians, etc. The DJs, everybody's out of work. So how can we join forces to get ourselves back to work during a pandemic? And then there's a whole host of constitutional issues. I've never seen power so abused under this pandemic. And I think it's deeply starting to affect people emotionally, mentally, and you know, if we keep doing this, it's unsustainable. We can't keep going in this direction. It's unsustainable. I can't keep people on payroll and not have revenue coming in. And club owners can't do that either. And landlords can't pay the mortgage. And I understand renters can't pay their rent.
Yeah, we're running out of time. I mean, that's the bottom line.
We are.
Yes,
we are.
And we spoke on the phone last night even about this. And even if we got, like, my idea is just grab the greatest minds in the industry. Get me the Langans, get me, you know, the Westlands, get me Don Waite, get me all the smartest people, get me Ace, get me you know, and lock us all in a room and come up with a solution to this problem and figure out a way to execute it. But then you had told me, even doing all of that, you know, is intelligent, smart, and backed as your organization is, you're not getting that far with the politicians because there's no one to even listen to your requests. There's no one to even talk to you and educate you as to how we can get reopened quicker. And we're getting kind of shut down figuratively from the politicians from the gate.
Well, let me make this very clear.
Yeah.
So that you guys don't think that it's just the adult entertainment industry. So what I said to you yesterday was not only, you know, it used to be sometimes you'd get a door slammed in your face, but the doors weren't even, they were closed, they were locked, nobody's home. So now that just changed last night after we talked. So we did have one promising conference call, and that's all I can give you guys right now. But I don't want you to think, you know, the ACE board has gotten together and really they are trading information. A lot of club owners are trading information across the country. 8 clubs in Texas filed, and I thought this was interesting. They filed a lawsuit and they're asking Governor Abbott to justify the science. They're doing discovery on the science that led the governor to impose closures on bars. That should be interesting, because I would like to know what the science is. And if you can't back up the science, how can you enforce the mandate? And I look at, when I talk to the epidemiologist that we have, by the way, which these gentlemen they've also, they offered to act as health and safety experts. Do you know how unheard of that is for our industry, to have 2 people that worked in the upper echelons of government willing to act as advisors to the adult club industry to try to help us get open again? I think that's pretty damn cool. So as we talk, the virus doesn't know the difference between a church, a bar, etc. But rather than complain about all that, and it falls on deaf ears because we have to go in with other groups. We have to go in because there will be people out there that, despite our best intentions, despite all our evidence, they'll keep us shut down just because of the nature of our business, and they'll use COVID as the ruse. So we have to be careful of that too. But again, I go back to, we have to do it better than any other industry. We've got no choice, and that's where we are right now. So how do we do that? How do we just beef up those safety protocols? And clubs have done it. So I praise people like 2001 Odyssey, like MAL Entertainment, Slim Balcom's clubs. Eric has done a fantastic job. Ed Anakar, I know, was running his ass off when Tootsie's was open. He was on that floor making sure everyone was abiding by the safety protocol.
Bet.
So people have put up plexiglass. Joey Bien in the Carolinas, he has been on that phone with me every day. And what I really appreciate about Joey is he's pretty much a newbie to the adult entertainment industry. So he's looking at everything with fresh eyes, and he's tapping his entrepreneurial skills from other business, like he used to own dental practices and a framing shop, and he was a PepsiCo executive. So he really comes up with some good ideas, and that's what it takes. It's not just Angelina Spencer out there, because there's no way in hell I could do this unaided. It's people like you. It's Josh, everybody that's sitting on this call right now. We're all putting our heads together. We're brainstorming, but then we go beyond that. So we did develop a written set and an electric set of guidelines. The electronic guidelines we update continuously, and we give them out for free to any club owner that wants to use them as part of their package, as part of their COVID safety reopening package. We have checklists. We don't do the legal part of it. We don't do the we ask that they contact their local lawyer, because, if they want, for example, waivers on COVID, we don't do that. So, but what we can do is a best practices for the industry. And that's what we have done. So it did work for a while. Clubs were starting to open again. And then boom, we get this Yeah, we get, well, it's not blowback. It wasn't.
No, they're rolling back to phase 1, where in a lot of places, like even down here, we're at phase 2, and now all the politicians are like, nope, roll it back, start over again, and now it seems like we're starting over.
But the bars in a lot of cases weren't open, so they can't use the bars as their scapegoat anymore, because the bars weren't open and you're having a surge. But what did we talk about yesterday, Plat? The undocumented, illicit pop-up and house parties all over the country, not just in Florida, but all over the country, which are taking place. And now the average age for a COVID positivity is 21.
Yeah.
So where are they going? They're going somewhere, and they're partying. So you have a state like Nevada who has who is facing a historical deficit shortfall, revenue shortfall. It's something like they've never seen. They are talking about cutting their agency budgets by 50%. They don't know where they're going to make up the shortfall. Well, guess what? When you have hundreds of kids going to these parties, and these parties are being launched at least 3 nights a week in particular states in multiple areas, people are making bank, but it's not licensed businesses, and it's not you and me, and it's not people who work. It's, usually and unfortunately, we've had scenarios where gang members are running these these pop-up parties, whether it's on a yacht, mansions, industrial.
Airbnb is a big one.
I'm sorry, what?
Airbnb is a big one. Like people are renting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Barn parties. We had one enterprising young man who rented an industrial building with 4 floors. And I'll tell you, and the one thing that Eric and I sort of laughed about, and he was right, he sent me a text. He's like, well, hell, if I would, he said, I would have done that too. And I would have too, because, you're young and you want to have fun, and you don't think about, just imagine if you could open up a business and you don't have to think about liability or licensing or any of that. And it's
taxes or any of that, right?
Or taxes.
Yeah.
So now they're taking potential state revenue. They're definitely taking our revenue, and we're getting COVID surges, and it's not the bars. So it's better, I think, and this is the argument I've been using with elected officials, because for them, typically they tend, and I'm saying it, typically they tend to be older. They don't understand the technology. They don't understand how anybody could put together a quote pop-up party or a flash party. And then I start showing them the articles and the video and the stories. And I said, is it better for these guys to take off with potential state tax revenue and compromise the safety of the citizens of the great state of the Sunshine State, or whatever, or Nevada or any other state? Or is it better to perhaps let the bars open at limited capacity with state approved safety protocols in place?
Can we start a huge lawsuit against the government to expedite this process? I mean, what are granted, we're the employees of the industry. You're the one with the club owners that are making you're the decision makers. As an employee to a decision maker, what is the industry doing to get us open quicker versus just the way things have been happening? I mean, is there a way to sue the government and get open?
Yeah, there are a bevy of lawsuits on the dockets, but here's the problem with lawsuits, Plat. They take time. A lot of times they're not decided in a day. Now, unless you get a TRO or something like that. The other thing is you can't just go and sue the federal government. If you remember all the way back in March, when you look back at this, the states told the government, we don't want your interference. We will handle our own home rule. We will handle our own state issues. And look what we have. So you can't sue the federal government. They're going to say it's a state issue. And the state's going to say, well, it's not our problem. It's a county issue. And the county's going to say it's a municipality issue. So
yeah, this whole pass the buck thing has gotten completely out of control. I mean,
right.
It started with the federal, and they said the governors are going to handle this. And the governor's
That's
like,
right.
The county can handle it. And the county's like, the city can handle it. And the city has no authorization to make decisions on that level. So we're stuck. It's just a pass the buck.
You are stuck because they can take the liquor licenses of the places for which you work. And in 2 instances in Florida, that has happened. It's also happening around other states. And it's regular bars and adult facilities that have said, enough, I'm going to open, and boom, they've lost their license or they've had it suspended. But there have been cases that are pending where we're waiting for, different tacks, if you will, like wanting to see the science. There was a case that was filed in the Carolinas, unfortunately, because they tested the governor's mandate in North Carolina, and the judge came out and said, it's a governor's mandate. You cannot violate that. And if he says you have to be closed for the health, safety, and welfare of the people, you will remain closed under that until that order is lifted.
Okay, what about our constitutional right to protest? That seems to be the only thing that gets a ton of attention right now. Is there any way that maybe I dress Bobby up as the COVID virus and we literally go to the state capitol with thousands of not just strip club employees, nightclub employees, bar and tavern employees, event coordinators, people that run concert venues, Jake Record, we'll even get him out of his house. Is there a way that we can establish, like if we had 5,000 people meet us on the steps of the Capitol and then call CNN and manipulate their ass the same way they manipulate everybody else and get a story going, would that expedite us getting these clubs open quicker? Or is it a moot point because the government is in the middle of a pandemic and they don't want us to basically open anyway? But I think if we join forces with our neighboring industries, that really expands our group, and I think it's impossible to avoid that many people. Is there a way to do something like that?
I'm never going to dissuade anyone from peaceable assembly under our Constitution. So if you guys can figure out a way to organize and make that happen, I would never stand in anyone's way of their constitutional rights to peaceably assemble for a protest.
But could that blow up in our face, though? In other words, like Tootsies becomes headline news because I'm the Tootsies guy. And now all of a sudden the government says, okay, when they're back open, we're going to figure out a way to mess with them down the road. And we know that happens. I mean, that happens all the time.
Well, it could happen if it's a strip club only sort of assembly. But so as we talked yesterday, one of the things that people need to consider and not forget is it's a variety of workers from a variety of industries that are impacted. It should be a variety of people exercising their constitutional rights, or the fact that they've lost their homes. So it's projected. There is a DC economist that projected yesterday that if things continue without another stimulus package, and someone told me, and one of you guys chime in, please. I hadn't seen it. Someone just told me this morning that they thought another stimulus package was passed, and I hadn't seen it for workers. I don't think anyone's seen it. So I think that was probably not true. But if you don't get an additional stimulus, the economist said that about 28 million people will be homeless by the end of October.
That's scary.
That's very scary. So that's
gonna be homeless, Bobby?
Soon.
Yeah.
Soon. Yeah. Coming soon. Stay tuned.
Yeah. So what happens? What is the government? And these are great questions for elected officials. Are you guys going to wait? And here's the other thing. It's like, I want to strip them of their paycheck. I would like to see them go without a paycheck for a few months and live the way that most workers in the United States that are in retail or hospitality have had to live for the last 4 or 5 months. See if they could do it.
I would take away their platform too. If we're going to defund the government, let's defund the media as well. The media, they're the enablers.
Right. But our elected officials, the media is getting high ratings and advertising.
Yeah, they're the only ones winning.
Yeah, and the elected officials, but the elected officials are still getting a paycheck, and they still have their health care, and they still have their roofs over their head, and they can educate their children, and they can, so they don't have to abide really by the same laws necessarily as we do in some of those economic cases. So if they were to go without a paycheck, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because they're going to guard their resources and duck and cover. But what I would like to see them do is get out ahead of the COVID-19 complications that we are going to see in terms of homelessness, suicide, homicide, domestic violence,
abuse, right?
Substance abuse. I just talked to a gentleman in the hospital industry, and he said, we're not at capacity. That's a lie. And this was in Florida. And he said, what we are seeing, he said, I had 4 admittances yesterday for substance abuse related accidents where, and one person is now brain damaged as a result of drinking themselves into a stupor over worrying about COVID. How are our elected officials planning to deal with the onslaught of potential homelessness, mental health issues, and substance abuse? Are they going to have a knee-jerk reaction? Are they going to try to mail stimulus checks to people who have now been evicted? How is this going to work?
Well, let me ask you this. The four of us are not political people at all. We're just not, even in our personal lives. Bobby and I don't talk politics ever. Josh and I don't talk politics. Jake and I talk politics a little bit, but it's on a different level. We are, however, ambassadors to an industry. We are, however, concerned about our brothers and sisters, even in our competitive markets. Who is the person, like, if there's one thing we are, and you've said this from the very first time I met you, you know, over a decade ago, we are the mouthpiece of the industry. The DJs are the informants. We're the ones that are literally getting the word out, you know, in an effective manner. And we've learned over the years how to do it in a creative way. Even right now, Bobby's doing comedy in his square without saying a word. Josh has developed music with a message. Jake runs our websites and all of our applications and has a really efficient manner in getting information out to the masses. We have built a very decent network of industry, people. If we were to creatively get something together, maybe Josh puts together a song and Bobby does something in a comedy way, and I conjure up thousands of supporters, and Jake gets, you know, infiltrates the web. Even if we get all of those boxes checked, where would we take it to make the most impactful difference to get our clubs at least a recognition of getting open quicker than the way things are moving right now?
Yeah.
Who is the magic man? Who is the magic person that I can sick Bobby Mack on for weeks upon end until they cave? Because I will do that. And Bobby will dress up as COVID and wear tights in meetings. We'll do it. Like, it's not a point of we can't do it. It's a point of being effective and getting us the results that we're looking for.
Yeah, right. And I understand. I do. But if I had that one magic person that I could go to make everything go away and have it all back to where it was, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. Nobody has access to that one magic person. I told you yesterday, I feel as if I've reached into the bottom of my magic hat and I'm out of tricks. And it's not even about being tricks. It's about, this is getting, I don't think, you know, on one side they say, oh, we're taking it seriously, but they're fudging all the data and the numbers, and the media doesn't help because they make money on the ensuing panic. And then we have an election coming up, and that's a whole nother story. So there is no one, as much as I want to tell you there's one person, there is no magic bullet. There are no silver bullets. There's no smoke and mirrors. There's just, they're saying the numbers are surging. The virus is definitely real. It has definitely killed people, even some people in our industry.
Sure.
So again, we're right back to the beginning where we're balancing that fine line between being able to open and managing a deadly virus. And when I talked to Joe Redner, he said it so succinctly. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. So we're doing our best. We're hitting it hard. We're trying to do it better than anyone else. We want, you know, if we're doing it better than a restaurant or a church or some other establishment, why can't we be open, and what's the science? And that seems to be, you know, the strategy right now, in addition to those lawsuits that were and have been filed, but again, in some cases take time. And then you have to decide is it worth it for a club owner to spend even more money to appeal that process?
Well, that's the thing too. And in some cases, based on the, you know, guidelines, some of the smaller clubs in our industry, it's not worth it to them to open because they're going to take a financial loss because they don't have the necessary means to have the patrons come in mass. That's how they make their money. You know, not all clubs.
And a lot of clubs are doing that. And even the Dollhouse in Myrtle Beach opted to do that, just recently, because they, it's like there's now a curfew in place and all these things are happening, and they can't it's not worth it for them to keep the lights on. They actually lose more money because if they have to close by 10 o'clock at night, it's just not worth it to them to stay open.
They put Palm Beach on a curfew today. Palm Beach was doing better than Broward and Dade combined, and out of nowhere. I mean, like they haven't had any issues, haven't had any problems. They were just getting ready to start opening some extra things, and then pow, they're like, curfew. And I don't understand the whole curfew thing. I guess the government's saying, well, this is the time where people are socializing in the worst way possible. And it's like,
well, it was
still 24-hour lifestyles.
Palm Beach made their decision based on the numbers that were released from the Florida Department of Health, and those numbers are wrong. So if you're an elected official,
can we sue the Department of Health for being wrong?
Well, maybe in Florida, and I think that it should be a collective group of individuals, not just the adult club industry, but a whole contingent. But when you see a 98% positivity rate and you're an elected official in Palm Beach, what are you going to do?
Right.
And then there's a little bit of politics involved with that too. So
can we out-politic the politicians? I mean, we have some smart people. I mean,
yes, we have.
You're one of the smartest people I know, Angelina, and we have Lou.
But I can't give that strategy out here on a podcast.
I hear you. But what I'm asking is, without giving a strategy, do we have options at this stage in the ball game right now? Because I feel like we're in the early goings of the ball game, and we're a long way to winning it. But I also feel like there's no playbook, so we're just like having like a pickup playground game versus an organized.
Well, we have a playbook. The industry has a playbook. It's the elected officials who are just freezing. So they're starting to get pushback from the private sector. And of course, I'll send people that aren't from the adult entertainment industry in there, and not just, Joe's gas station. I mean, some pretty heavy hitters in the corporate and private sector. And policy analysts who are talking to our elected officials. So I can tell you that, but it's like, I get impatient too, Plat. Yeah. I want to go there and just beat them with a stick and say, come on, make a decision, I want to be that jockey with a whip, move, get to the finish line. But they're not, they're not doing that right now. And there's no magic bullet. Do we have a game plan? Yeah. Do we have a strategy? Yes. Are we still, even if those doors are closed, are we still beating on them? Oh, hell yes. So I don't want to, just as you didn't want to be cliche at the beginning of this podcast, I don't want to be cliche either by saying, hang in there, but you have no choice. But I do like what John Gray said. He wrote an article for ED Publications, John Gray, Experiment Rhino, and he said, we as an industry will survive this. We will. And the important thing to remember is everything that you're seeing in the media is not always what is really happening. So we're spending a lot more time on social media because we want connection, but at the same time, it can be depressing and it can be frustrating.
I hate social media right now. I really, Bobby and I were just talking about that, especially Bobby, he gets us fans just by doing some comedy stuff, and and Josh is known to hate social media for a while because of the negativity, even before all this stuff started.
Right.
And now Josh seems to be the genius in all this because he realized what we just figured out, which was, there's some nastiness going on. There's a pandemic, but there are so many trolls. There is so much agenda. Right. And these are friends of mine, like people I love and respect, and they're saying the most idiotic things, and it makes me want to put my head through a wall.
But it's not always your friends saying idiotic things. So a lot of times, so you guys, based on the business and industry that you're in, I consider all of you pretty, technically savvy in some areas. So one of the things that you have to remember is you said it with the trolls, but Facebook, Instagram, all these social media platforms, they grab algorithms. So I call them angry algorithms. they rise to the, like heat, it rises to the top. And that's what keeps getting reprocessed on your post over and over again. What is bound to happen when you are constantly barraged with negativity? You're going to go negative. And the other thing is, it's not always your friends doing that. I received the most horrid post and video from Michael Peters in a private message, but I knew it wasn't from Michael.
Oh.
I knew it wasn't from Michael. It's what's called a sock puppet. So somebody was inserting that into my private message feed to get me to go off on Michael. And that's what can happen with your friends too. So if you guys ever receive these private messages on social media, it may not be from the person that you think it's coming from. And, sock puppets and bots are wonderful at getting us all stirred up and emotionally reacting rather than playing offense. And I say, get off it. If you want your mental health, if you want to preserve your mental health, go for a walk, get outside. I'm telling you, do it. Get outside. The epidemiologist and the biowarfare safety expert have both said to me, and they still maintain this position, the virus can make some people with pre-existing comorbidities or other issues sick enough to die, that they'll die. The majority of us are going to, we might feel like shit for a couple of days. You're going to survive. And many more of us are going to test positive and be asymptomatic. And what are we seeing? We're seeing that. So until the politicians, until it's kicking them in the ass enough to grow some courage so that they could say, yes, everything should be open. See, for me, I look at it as, you're telling me this is deadly and we have a surge, then shut it all the fuck down.
Right. That's what Josh said last week. Josh said, he goes, listen, he goes, one way or the other, either shut it all down or open it all up and roll the dice.
That's right.
But someone's got to step up and fucking lead, and nobody's doing this, and it's causing people in our business and all businesses. But I mean, this is an industry-related show, but all businesses, we have people living in their cars right now. We have people packing their houses because they know they're not going to be able to get out of that debt.
And how much is the media reporting on that? Very, very little. And
they don't care about that. What did you always say? It's the sizzle, not the steak, right?
That's right. And that should be that they should be following that. But no, they're ignoring that. They're ignoring that. And then politicians, once again, are going to get T-boned, and they're going to have to face this issue. But guess what? And I'm saying it here first. If our elected officials do not get their act together on this COVID and either close us all down, all of us, Amazon, Publix, everything, nobody goes anywhere for a month or whatever, 2 weeks. And then, or instead of this ad hoc piecemeal, everybody's open with state approved or municipality approved safety protocols and social distancing and limited capacity. You can't have this ad hoc piecemeal. You cannot do this. It's like putting scraps together. The virus does not know the difference between a church or a strip club. It does not.
No.
And this is silly. And then again, we go back to the pop-up parties and everything else. So,
or the protests. We haven't even talked about the protests. It's not a coincidence that all these spiked cases happened 2 weeks after the protests, where tens of thousands of people were meeting without masks.
And people are still protesting.
And that had nothing to do with our industry, yet we were getting the fingers pointed at us. Oh, it's the bars, it's the restaurants, it's the nightclubs. No, it was 10,000 millennials storming the streets of LA. LA was shut down. And then 2 weeks later now their cases are in the thousands.
And this isn't sustainable. So what are we facing if politicians decide that it's okay to get T-bone times 2? What are we facing? We are facing not a rebellion. We are facing an outright revolt that could lead to Civil War 2.0.
Wow.
And that's well, you can't have 28 million people homeless, and you can't have a bunch of small business owners. You can't expect them to keep up with payroll when there's no revenue coming in. It doesn't work in our society. That's not what we're built upon. Now, if we're going to roll into some other sort of society where we're no longer the United States of America, I don't know what that'll look like, but it may not be pleasant for most of us. So, and that's really taking it out there and far.
Yeah. No, I get it.
You know, so I want them to get out ahead of this. I don't want them to get sideswiped by it, and like they did with COVID. And all of this is a knee-jerk reaction. And then people can't get out on unemployment. People can't get their stimulus checks. People can't buy groceries. People are living out of cars. But you know, and there's I get very angry that politicians, you know, they talk about, you know, they accuse us of turning a blind eye, but they will turn a blind eye to certain things like homelessness or substance abuse or increased domestic violence, and without making the connection that these are attendant consequences of COVID-19 too. And again, yeah, we're back at that. We're back at finding that balance, but I don't want to give up hope. And I want to go with what John Gray said, what Eric has said, what other people in the industry have said, that we will get through this somehow. Doesn't mean we're not scared. Doesn't mean we're not dying financially right now or otherwise, and you know, or otherwise, unfortunately. But you know, we will get through this.
Wow.
And
You're right. You're absolutely right. Guys, do you have any questions? We have this rare opportunity. We have Angelina here. Again, I know we're not normally a very serious type of show like this, but this is a great opportunity to ask questions and get a straight answer. Bobby, you look like.
Well, I asked Plat this the other day. I was actually kind of shocked that corporate America doesn't have more pull, because, you know, you always grow up thinking that corporate America owns the world. They pull all the strings. It seems kind of shocking that corporate money is being shut down on this level and not allowed to speak. Being on the inside track, and I know everything's regional, but have you heard any ramblings of when things might actually get back to normal? Or what is the projected idea that they're having in their head that they're playing with?
Yes, the two things I have heard, not to be construed with this is what's going to happen, because when I repeat forecasting, I tend to get slammed by people who get really upset that, you know, they don't want to hear the ugly truth. So one of the things I'm hearing is we won't be back to normal again until there's a vaccine. I don't know how many of you heard about it, but 1,000 contract nurses have been hired in Florida to dispense remdesivir, which is promoted by Gilead, and we have a shitload of it that just arrived to Florida. Now, it's supposed to not work as a vaccine against the illness, but it's supposed to minimize the length of illness. And then from that, you have to break it down into more esoteric parts, and I'm not the person you guys need to be talking to about that. So they're saying vaccine. Well, a vaccine can take 18 months to 2 years if you rush it. So are we going to be closed down for 2 years? No, we can't. We just can't. There's just no way. Or we're just not going to be the United States of America anymore. So that being said, the experts and people that I've talked to, whether they're in science or medicine or whatever, they tend, and the corporate people too. And I want to say something about that, Bobby. I want to add something to that. But what they're telling us is, we may not be back to full capacity until March. So next March. And it's like, okay, fine, open us up at limited capacity. People have to pay bills. And we can find a way to work within those parameters. We can. So you guys are all clever, whatever, 50% capacity. I'm good with that. Safety protocols, no problem. As far as the corporations, the big corporations, don't forget, some of them are still making money. Some of them, the airline industry is a good example of an industry. Yeah, they're getting hit hard now because nobody's really flying or allegedly flying. They got a $50 billion bailout. No questions asked. Not really, not too many questions asked. So remember, those huge corporations that are people too. I say facetiously, but those huge corporations, you know, many of them got multi-million dollars. You know, even Kanye West, little Jay's, is it Yeezy, his clothing line got over $2 million in PPP funding. And
so
the guys,
the strip club money, why can't the strip clubs get some kind of subsidies?
they are getting some. So here's the problem with that. So some aren't, some were turned down. We don't know all the reasons that people are turned down. Maybe they weren't keeping appropriate payroll, or in some cases, some were turned down because they said, oh, you're over. And as Luke LaRose explained to me, the attorney Luke LaRose explained, they were declined under what's called prurient interest in the SBA definitions. So that was written, or that was stuck in there as an amendment by Jesse Helms back during the Clinton era. But judges have ruled, and then club owners were turned down under that. But that falls under an obscenity statute. We're not obscene. We're not considered obscene under the definition of the law, is what Luke told me. So that being said, there were successful suits filed where people said this is unprecedented, and if churches are receiving PPP money under SBA, strip clubs too can receive money under SBA. And it seems like there were 3 cases I know about, one in New York, one in Michigan, and one in Wisconsin, I believe, where they all successfully were entitled to the funding. Now, and then there were many more club owners that did get PPP funding. However, there's an intrinsic problem with that. So it's only allowed to be used, or was only allowed to be used, for 4 things. One was payroll, one was utilities, one was lease payment, and one was something else I don't remember. And if you did not meet those parameters, because they're grants, it's grant money. And if you don't meet those parameters and pay those 4 things only, you owe it as a loan back to the government.
Wow.
And you only have 18 months to pay it back. So why would you take a $2 million loan as a club industry? And now we're into that period. Now they have given people extensions because the closures have lasted longer, but it's really put a lot of club owners who decline those loans in a pinch right now, because they decline the loans and now they've extended the closure. And now it can be used for a few other things now. So they really got kind of caught, and they're trying to make an appropriate business decision. And that's the thing too about, a lot of people don't realize all of the things that club owners are responsible for. Like, if Bobby does something at a club that potentially gets that club sued, it's the club owner that's paying the legal bill. It's if a customer does something, it's if the health department comes in because a dancer has decided to go off the rails with a customer, it's the club owner who pays all those citations and fines. And then liquor violations and code enforcement and health codes and everything else, they take on a brunt of that, and they're not going to tell you guys about that. They're not going to tell industry workers about all the responsibility that they do take on. They also don't talk about, what they've done in terms of helping people with food and care packages and housing and paying phone bills. And in one case, paying for a funeral for someone anonymously. So, these are things that I think that, this is where we are all in this together. So any other questions?
Josh, you got anything? Jake, you guys got anything? Bobby, you got any more for Angelina before she goes?
That was it pretty much for me.
I just wanted to really thank you for going to bat for us and having our back. It seems like just the general public, when it comes to the bar business in general, if they don't directly benefit from the bar business, they're like, what's the big deal? Just stay home. You don't have to go out and have margaritas. Just stay home and drink at home. And when it comes to strip bars, I mean, the general public really just nobody else is going to go to bat for us. So I really do genuinely appreciate everything you do for this industry.
Well, remember, and thank you, but remember, people are going through their own shit right now. So they're really suffering, and even outside of our industry. So, you know, they've got their heads are somewhere else, you know, mentally and stress wise, and dealing with kids in the house that, you know, because of homeschooling now. So those are things to keep in mind, and not everybody is against you. So typically when you deal with elected officials, if they're never going to stand up publicly and wave your banner.
Right.
You know, the more intelligent, astute people in office, and there are a few, they do get it. They do get it. And if I talk to them one-on-one, but it's political suicide for them to get up, to stand up and do that. I don't want to go off this podcast thinking that you don't have friends, because you do. And there are a lot of people who do understand you're not working right now and you need help, and there needs to be a change. And damn, we're working hard to try to make that change. And we're you know, I'd even go so far as to say we're trying to force the issue, but again, it comes back to close it all down or let us open
it all up.
What?
Close it all down or open it all back up. That seems to be, you know, I mean, that's it. And there's just no leadership, and it's terrible like that. But we've never dealt with anything.
And people do care about bar people. They do. And you know, and I hear private sector and I hear public sector, and they just, you know, it's like I said, they get in that gate and they get fed the wrong numbers, just like we do. And they make decisions based on those numbers. So when, you know, like this Florida incident that just happened, when you have fudge data and you send that out all over the state, and elected officials everywhere have to make decisions based on a phony 98% positivity rate, that's BS.
But those people should be held accountable, Angelina, and they're not.
They should be held accountable, and they shouldn't even have their damn paycheck, you know, if they make a mistake like that.
100%. Jake, you got anything for Angelina?
No. What I was going to add, I mean, we can complain as much as we want about taking away politicians' pay and trying to look at it from our point of view. We've been saying that since the dawn of politics, that politicians are overpaid. I mean, look at some of these politicians that have been career politicians for 30 years, and depending on your point of view, maybe they've gotten things accomplished, maybe they haven't, but they're millionaires. We have a collective wealth of our Congress, probably $500 million, or $500 million or more from some of these prominent members. We're never going to get them to look at it from our point of view. That's never going to happen. There's never going to be a day where we're able to take away a mayor's paycheck or anybody defund.
Right.
We're never that. So, I mean, we can imagine like what that would be like if we did do that. Like, oh yeah, let's make them look at it from our point of view. Let's make them live like us, you know, struggling. That's never going to happen. You vote them out and you vote somebody else back in that isn't willing to conspire with corporations or use pseudoscience to, you know, to govern with. You have to find people that are going to be legitimate people. Our only option is go vote. I mean, you have to have a movement to vote these people out. You're never going to change the minds of people who have worked their entire lives to govern people. That's what their is to office and control people. A small movement like the club industry isn't going to get them out. It's just not.
And our pockets aren't deep enough collectively. No. And you're right. You make a very, very good point. Although it's nice for me to fantasize about not paying politicians, you're absolutely right. What I see is really good people who go into politics with the most altruistic of motives, and then they meet with this resistance. And they change because in order to get your bills passed, you have to concede a little bit over here with this guy, or he's not going to give your legislation the time of day. And that's a little off kilter, but it seems to work for them. The other thing is Congress, when we're talking federally, was never designed to be a long-term career goal. It was designed for the average American to go to run against another American in a race, in an elected race, and go serve for X number of years. So we have them in states, we have it in Florida. Why can't we have congressional term limits? Well, we don't, because the people who have their asses in those seats for 30 or 40 years, they don't want to lose those millions of dollars. And it's really funny to me how suddenly they go into politics and they're worth maybe, I don't know, and then 30 years later, it's what you just said, they're worth millions. So how does that happen? And, how does that happen? And
how do you stop it? I mean, how do you stop that? Government is a way, when people think about politicians these days, they don't think about a struggling person. You think about somebody wealthy. Politics equal power, wealth and power go hand in hand. So when you think about but then you get down to a state level, you get down on a government level, and it's always wealthy senators, it's always wealthy, governors. But then when you get down on like a city level, the mayors are poor. Like there's very poor mayors. They hold really little power except over their little community. So I mean, that would be the easiest way to start a movement is you go after smaller communities. It has to start in your community, where your community stands up and says, your community and your community leaders are more easily influenced by their constituents of the community than Congress would be, or the president or anybody else.
Right. And you just opened up a segue into a great bit of politicking that happened in Texas not too long ago with Eric Langan, when he decided to open up Onyx. And the one takeaway, he opened it up as a restaurant. He had all the licenses. He wasn't violating the law, but he opened up. And one of the things that I remember the mayor called the state attorney and said, we're not taking this. We don't have the funding. And it forced the state to have to come in. So maybe you're onto something with that.
You have to start the movement small, and you get to a point where you're operating well within, like Eric's case. He constructed the business license. He constructed his reopening to fit within the parameters of the law. The law says you can open as a restaurant. Fantastic. You open as a restaurant. Hey, I'm not breaking the law. You just don't like that I found a loophole in your rules. You just don't like that I found a way to creatively open and still stay in business. But it takes people like that. It takes ingenuity like that to just say, you're not going to adhere by these crazy rules. You have to, err on the side of business owner, but you can't just say, I'm going to do exactly what the law says, and I'm never, because if it were up to certain people in politics, you would never open. There would never be a day where they say,
that's right.
The right day for you to open, go ahead, open full steam. You just eventually just have to seize the day and say, listen, we're doing everything we can to be safe. We believe this. You base your decisions on science and safety, but you have to at some point just say, no, I'm going to do this, whether you like it or not, even if it defies some rules. And if everybody would do that's the only way we're going to fully open back up. I don't like it because people will get sick. People are going to get sick. I mean, the virus is a real thing. But without people doing it on their own and saying, I'm going to make this decision and do it on my own, and you just rely on the government to tell you what to do, the government's never going to let us be free again. They're not going to do that.
And you can't leave Eric standing out there dangling. You have to have a multitude of industries standing up to join him. So everybody in the city that's a business owner has to make the decision, we're opening. Just like those parties, just like those pop-up parties. You can't just, otherwise what happens to people like Eric is if they defy the order, they get their liquor licenses taken away, and then they're out of business.
Yep.
And then the other business owners scramble because they get scared. But if you get a bevy of owners to do it all over a state in all these industries, and they open and they just sort of, then you might get somewhere. Then you might get some, because there's no way all that can be enforced at the same time. The unfortunate thing with that is they'll come for the strip clubs first, and then they'll work their way from there, is what I feel. But I do agree with you on that. And that's, it's like why did we have the Boston Tea Party? And if you don't know what that is, go look it up. No taxation without representation. How can you hold people under a mandate, in some cases where the governor hasn't even signed it, like in Texas? How can you extend the mandate and still expect people to pay their property taxes when they have no access to their property?
No, we're just in water right now. I mean, the government doesn't want anybody to figure it out in that capacity. You know, they don't want people to stand up strong. They're just trying to keep their heads afloat and do anything that they can to.
They're flocking sheep is their mentality.
Yeah, I mean, the only way we're ever going to open back up is to seize the day to open back up. I mean, I don't see a day when the government says, hey, you know, today's a good day for you. Let's go ahead and open up all the strip clubs. You're not going to see that on CNN. You know, CNN's going to be like, we're opening up all the strip clubs nationwide today. We're a low-hanging fruit. We're a disposable industry to them. If we exist, we exist. If we don't exist, nobody cares. You know, so how do you get people behind that? How do you get people to say, hey, this industry employs thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. How do you get that message out to the people?
We dress Bobby up as COVID-19 and send him out there. We start.
Well, you talk about making yourself low-hanging fruit. Like I said, I'm going to go right back to what I said before. I do believe in peaceable assembly under our Constitution, but it's not just about the strip clubs doing it. And I know you guys want to go out there but you're right. You're low-hanging fruit, but you're not the only ones. You're not the only Americans affected. So what do you do when multiple Americans are affected? You find a way to join forces with them. Unfortunately, I'm not an events coordinator. I'm talking with some, but you know, this isn't my wheelhouse. Maybe it's your wheelhouse. You know, maybe you guys can do something, but I would suggest that you don't just make it strip club industry specific, because the moment that you guys do that is the moment that, you know, people they either ridicule or scoff because they don't understand the industry. They don't understand that in so many ways we're at the forefront of not only technology, but constitutional freedoms as well.
Yeah, you couldn't assemble an industry-only protest.
No.
There are protests for the industry, but they've been going on since 80s or 90s. There's always some strip club union group in San Francisco that's protesting. And when you put those people on the news likes to, you know, find a way to misconstrue the message. So they'll always put a person in there that doesn't look the greatest in their stripper outfit, or they'll always put the person in there that just looks Looney Tunes crazy with some crazy thing on a sign. And then that's who ends up representing you in the public's eye. So if you were to assemble a strip club industry protest, they're going to pick out the most crazy people of our industry, and that's going to be what shows up on CNN. So you have to piggyback onto a larger movement. There has to be something with restaurant owners or other nightclub owners, or even, you know, you start getting in on, like, I don't know, Twin Peaks or Hooters restaurant. They're all closed too. You know, when you start having them voice a movement, everybody loves Hooters. Everyone thinks that's a wholesome family restaurant as far as, you know.
Yeah, don't forget either, like, the other aspect of the entertainment industry, comedy clubs and things where we can get our mitts on some celebrities and some influencers, because that's really, like, if that's the only way, and we have to band together, you know, do a kind of a band of brothers type thing. You know, Bobby gets all the comedians together. Josh gets all the rappers and you know, entertainers together from that field. Jake goes and grabs the nerdy computer people. I go and grab the record companies and things like that, and the event coordinators, as Angelina said. And we all come together. You know, that's going to take so much time just to organize. Like just that alone, you're looking at least 2 to 3 months of organization. Meanwhile, everyone's just kind of like shuffling their feet, and it just. I think that's the part that's the scariest for all of us, is the time frame. It's like nobody can snap their fingers and make a decision right now that gets us open, and that's scary as shit, because, you know, that's what we need right now. I mean, there's so many people that we know and love that are, you know, looking to get out of our industries respectively just to survive, so that when we do finally go back to some sense of normalcy, our core values, our core people, our Bobby Macks, our Josh Fioris, you know, those type of people might be thriving with Amazon. They might be thriving in another form of business that is able to coexist with this pandemic. And that's, so it's these underlying issues that aren't necessarily being talked about or touched that scares me the most personally, you know. But Angelina, I want to say on behalf of all of us, just a huge thank you, and we love you so much, because that underlining part I'm talking about is exactly what you do every day. And I know that you probably haven't had a good night's sleep since the Super Bowl, you know. And I believe that, because every time I talk to you, you know, I can feel the passion, you know, and I think that's why you and I get along so well. We're so passionate about what we do, and so willing to help others, you know. But going back real quick to the mental health aspect of things, when I called you 2 weeks ago, you didn't even say hello. You said, DJ Platypus, how are you doing right now? And I think those 3 words are the most important words right this second, which is, how are you? And I'm going to start a movement today, right now. And Bobby, I'm starting it with you because you're the most charismatic person I know. I want you to start a social media campaign just to do a mental wellness check on our industry, meaning how are you needs to become our theme. And I want people to pick up the phone right now, today, and call someone you haven't talked to in your industry and ask those very special words, how are you? And take a minute of your life to listen to some of these stories, because not only do we need to be there to be a shoulder to cry on and help these people through this crisis right now, we also need to kind of get a gauge and a check as to where we are at, so that people like Angelina, who have these contacts to health experts, mental health experts, you know, maybe we can get some outsourced help where we couldn't do that even a month ago. But we need to start now. We need to get on the phones and get on emails. And Bobby, you're great at that anyway. But I'm calling out to some kind of action starting here, Planet Platypus.
Well, and suggest that people private message you on Facebook, and you can reach out to them, or how are you? And sometimes people are trying to people.
I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
Just calling.
I just got a very important call from my friend Jake Record. He just
no, take the call. We'll wait. Take the call.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
How are you, Jake?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I just figured I'd call and check on you.
See how simple, how wonderful that is.
Working. But I hung up on him.
Yeah, he hung up on you, so you know.
But people, I think people feel lonely. They feel isolated. They're getting a barrage of negative media. And I like that, the How Are You campaign, because it makes people realize, hey, I'm not alone and somebody cares. And that is so important.
And it could make a difference in somebody's life right now, because there's a lot of depression going on. There's a lot of anxiety going on. And, you know, that concerns me a great deal. And, you know, we love this industry. We wouldn't, trust me, the 4 of us would not take time out of our lives to put this much effort into entertaining, you know, a couple thousand people a week, if we didn't love what we do. And when you love something so much and it's taken away from you, and you have no control on how to get it back, it's beyond a frustration I've never experienced before. And, you know, even at Tootsie's, we had the ability to go back for like 6 days. That first day was literally like winning the lottery, your birthday, Super Bowl, and everything combined into one moment. And it felt so explosive inside. Like I wanted to explode. I was so excited. And I was doing my job with such appreciation and such vigor and passion. And then they just took it away again. And it's like, you know, that's hard to deal with. Now, granted, Bobby and Josh love to joke with me all the time about my level of passion compared to the normal person's level of passion in our industry. I enjoy work. I enjoy doing projects. I enjoy being 24/7 thinking about this business. And I drive the three of these boys insane because of that on a daily basis. And I know that. And, you know, it's something I try to work on, but at the same time, I can't help myself. It's my drug of choice is the strip club industry. It's what I love. It's who I am, and it's what I want to be. And I want to be able to figure out a way utilizing our platform to help people. And we cannot financially help people. As good as Angelina is at her job, she's not even getting the door knocked on, like she said earlier, from these other politicians, because they're not going to listen to that. As smart as Jake is, he doesn't have all the answers. But what we do have is 5 minutes of our life to sit down and actually talk to you from the heart and understand what other people are going through, and understand that, you know, we need to get, just like this show today, this is an unconventional podcast that we did today, but we need desperately to get the discussion going. And that doesn't just have to be COVID related. That is mental health related as well, because people need to hear that.
And I would add too, if you have the ability to do so, and you can go for a walk with another industry member and talk in person, get off this disconnect for, I don't care if it's an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, even better, but make it a point in your day to disconnect from all social media. And just like you, with your passion, even though you have your passion, which I think is incredibly awesome, you still have to have moments where you back away to breathe, because if you don't, you'll run down. You need moments of recharging, just like your smartphone. You got to you have to recharge your person too. So, and sometimes that comes in the form of other people, because we are, even though we're human beings and we love our social media, we're still social beings.
Yeah, and it is tough. But one other thing we like to do aside from social media is we like to tell stories. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because Angelina, I think it's time that we find out a story about you. And I want to go back in time, and I want to go back to when you had a different name, which was Blaze. And, you know, a lot of people know this through our podcast, that once upon a time you were one of us. You actually worked in a club, and that job helped you propel a career that has
I'm still one of you.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. You actually
I'm just getting on stage.
So I want an Angelina, I want a Blaze story. I want a story from your Blaze days where you were a dancer, and I want to hear something, whether it's a customer story, whether it's a story that something that amazed you that your coworkers were doing, meaning other strippers, just something from that era that you can tell. And then I want to go around the room, and I want everyone to tell a story. If you want, I can have one of the other guys, because we have stories like for days, you know that. I mean, have
the other guys go first.
All right, so 25 years in the industry, I'm sure we can come up with something good. But just, okay, I'll tell a quick story that just happened when we reopened for 6 days. And we lost Josh. Josh heard stories and he bailed. He was gone. Hopefully he'll be right back. But no, we were coming back, and I asked every entertainer, what have you been doing with yourself for the last 3 months? Now, I was expecting to hear like crazy ass stories of like depression and like, you know, people are in the fetal position in a corner crying, waiting to open up, like I was. But people were actually being pretty resourceful. And one of the entertainers said, I taught English to all the strippers. And I was like, how did you do that? She's like, I opened up Zoom, and I would just charge the girls, you know, $20 a day, and we would have 2 hours of English class. But she wasn't teaching like I before E except after C. She was teaching the Latin girls how to manipulate the customers with her English. So she's not teaching standard English stuff. She's teaching standard, you know, manipulation process of being an entertainer. So now I have all these non-English speaking entertainers who basically just know how to say, "You are so sexy, Poppy," you know, and how to butter a guy up versus something like that. And I thought that was
phonetics.
That was pretty good. I mean, I could tell a million stories just about Bobby Mack when I worked with him too. Bobby, you want to tell the Hurricane Hugo story?
So during one of the worst hurricanes we had here, Tootsie's, the Tootsie's was actually like, Tootsie's was one of those clubs that would open no matter what was happening. Like if you could physically get to work, you were expected to be there, because we were the one place we knew everybody was going to come. So
True.
hurricane was standing. They decided to make a party out of it. Great idea, right? We'll have a hurricane party. So their idea was to dress me up in one of those raincoats that the Gorton's fisherman wears, you know, the big yellow things. And so we had dual microphones. A constant thing at the old Tootsie's was there would be a DJ in the booth and a DJ somewhere on the floor, and they would talk back and forth, and they do this back and forth together so that you felt like you were in the middle of the show if you're in the audience. So I was stationed by one wall, and Plat was in the booth. And so he's on the mic saying he's about to go to the weather report. You cut over to me on the wireless mic. I'm dressed like the Gorton Fisherman. I've got somebody on my left side whacking me with a tree branch, and somebody on my right side splashing me with cups of water. And they were like, just be funny. So that was it. I was
too. Remember the college kids, Tau Kappa Epsilon? They used to come in.
Yeah.
And we would always
the frat boys were the ones. Yeah. They saw someone throwing water on me, and everyone in that section took it as a cue to just throw their drinks in my direction. Ice cubes, everything, little umbrellas, straws, everything right in the eye, olives. But man,
that's better.
That was a school. That was my college right there. That was my college years when I was born into this industry the right way.
There was nothing better than when we would put Bobby on the spot, because we would always dress him up in something ridiculous. You know, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, he's done it all. But when he dressed up as Hurricane Hugo at the front door and he was doing the weather report, that was one of those moments where he never broke character. But the second that the event was over and we went back to the girls on stage, Bobby has this uncanny ability of getting up on stage and saying "fuck you" to me without saying "fuck you," and he would basically just, that face. You see that face he's making right now? he would let me have it in such a way like, bro, I got kicked in the balls. I'm pulling Ice Cube out of my outfit. They're hitting me with not just the leaves of the tree, the branches. I have welts. Do you see this welt? And he would like go up this thing. And then the next night, guess what? Bobby was at the front door again, because that's what made people talk. This was before social media. This was before we had the conventional ways of marketing and advertising we had today. We had to develop this craziness that was so Bob Jr., the original owner of Tootsie's, used to call it controlled chaos. And that's what Tootsie's was all about. So, so Angelina, give us a story about Blaze. I want to hear it. Give me something. Give me something back in your stripper.
So many. I don't know where to start. Well, how about if we go all the way back to the beginning?
Yeah.
So I'm my first night ever in a strip club, and I'm 18 years old, and I'm scared to death. First of all, you have to understand, I have to set the stage, if you will. I was working for $3.85, which was going minimum wage at the time, $3.85 an hour at a mall pet store. So I couldn't make ends meet. I couldn't pay bills. I'm trying to raise a son. I have a baby. And I have a friend from high school who is a singer now, and she danced for years, and she worked at the Dollhouse and stuff, and everybody called her Charlie, and boy, can she sing. So she says, well, let me take you to the Holiday Inn for drinks. And she came into the pet store, and she had been cutting tracks at the time with Rick James and Sheila E. So I'm really dating myself. And so she said, let me take you to get drink. Let's go to over here at the Holodome and have drinks. And I'm like, the Holodome? Ooh, that's such a fancy place. So I can't afford it. She said, no, I'll pay. Well, she pulls this huge wad of ones out of her pocket, and she's paying for the drink. And I'm like, what do you do? Are you working as a waitress? And she's like, no, I'm a dancer. And I'm like, what kind of dancer? Like a ballet dancer? And she starts laughing and she says, no dope, no dope, stripper. And I'm like, stripper. And the only image I had in my mind was she was at some seedy hotel room dancing in front of a guy with a stogie, because I didn't know clubs like this existed.
Right.
Remember, I was raised in a very rural, conservative environment. And
so is Jake. Look what happened to him. He was a live squirrel and married a porn star.
So she takes me to this club, and it's hilarious because it's called the Tea House of the Dancing Lady. That's the name of the club. Yeah. And the guy loved Marlon Brando, and he named his club after one of Marlon Brando's movies. But when you walk in there, it was the cheesiest, chintziest little club, but it was fun. The music was banging. He was the DJ. I remember there's a big red metal door, and I was scared to death. And I walk in the door, I follow her in, and I see, one thing I noticed, which was very cool, was immediately the diversity of the crowd. So there were people of a multitude of colors and backgrounds and ethnicities, which I thought, wow, I've never been exposed to this before. And it was pretty cool. So the other thing I noticed was Charlotte, who has long since retired, but she was on stage, and beautiful Native American woman dancing. And I'd never seen anybody in a thong ever, because we didn't have social media back then.
Right.
And I remember all the blood rushing to my cheeks, and I got so embarrassed for her, and I wanted to like throw a blanket over her, like, don't you know you're half naked in a bar?
Meanwhile, she would have killed you if you did that, because that's how they're making money.
So, and I remember sitting right by the door because I was afraid. I was trembling, and Charlie goes up, talks to the owner, Craig, and says, she comes back and she says, I got you an audition. And I'm like, okay, great. So immediately the bartender, Susie, who had these little bouncy Shirley Temple curls, comes bounding down, and she's like, let me give you some liquid courage, and pours Jack Daniels, a shot of Jack Daniels. The other thing I had not yet done was shots. So yeah. So I pound a shot, and I'm still nervous. I pound another shot, not realizing this shit's going to kick in, right? So I go to the back room where there's a dress. I have no clothes to wear. I don't know what I'm going to wear. I'm like, am I going to roll my underwear up my butt? I don't know. How am I going to do that? So I go back and I'm looking at costumes from a Vietnamese lady made these costumes, and her name was Sue Penn. And the thing I remember about Sue Penn, she came from Vietnam, and she had hair all the way down to her ankles. It was like a waterfall when she stood up, and it was gorgeous. And she made all these costumes. And I pulled this little thing off the rack that looks like something you might use to floss your teeth, but might not be good for anything else. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And I remember putting this, if you're a woman who has never worn a thong in her life, that's very uncomfortable. And it took everything in me to try to be graceful and not start plucking back there. So I put it on. I'm trembling. Well, then the alcohol starts kicking in because Charlie brings me another shot. So I think I'm on shot 3 or 4 now. All right. By the time I go on stage, the light comes on, the music starts, they're introducing Blaze, and there was nothing flaming about me on that stage. All right. So I start dancing, and somebody's yelling, you got to take off your clothes. And I'm just looking around, and I'm like, well, dancing. Okay, dancing. I start doing the twist.
No.
Mm-hmm.
You did the twist on a stripper stage?
I did the twist.
Wow.
And then I decided that it would be a great idea to show off my robot skills. Remember that?
No.
Yes, I did. What a humiliation. So it was 3 songs. I do my 3 songs. I trip off the stage. I pick myself up. There's one gentleman in a suit there. This place was pretty casual, but this guy had a suit on. He curls his index finger, asks me to come over, hands me a $20 bill, and he says, honey, I think you better look for another line of work.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's bad. Well, it gets worse. So I sit down with him, and I'm looking at this $20 bill, and I'm thinking, damn, I just made in like 3 songs what I normally make working for 5 hours at the pet store cleaning up. And I was a kennel technician, which is a glorified name for pooper scooper.
Yep.
So I looking at this 20, Charlie gets on stage, and she's gorgeous. She's still a beautiful lady. She extracts $1 from every customer, and that bitch made me go first on purpose. So I thought, it was weird. So what got worse was when I had that 20, and I ended up having to give it back to the man. You know why?
Why?
I puked all over his suit, and he needed to get it dry cleaned.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was so bad. So that was my foray into the strip club industry.
That's a great story.
I'm sorry, what?
That's a great story.
Oh, gosh. Well, here's the thing. So the next day I go to work at the pet store. I haven't slept. I'm hungover as hell. I'm running the store. And the owner, we didn't have cell phones back then. So the owner of the strip club calls the store, and he said, you're hired. And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? And that everybody's talking about what happened. You got to come back. And then I thought, you know what? If I can learn, if I can learn the pet store business, or I can do that, I can damn sure learn to strip. So it was so funny. This is the other funny part. My paycheck from the pet store came that day, and I think it was like $85 or something. I abruptly quit. I went to J.C. Penney to buy costumes. Oh, that's great. Yeah, so that was my foray, and then I was hooked, and I have met so many awesome people, smart people. I've learned so much, and the one thing that I can say about people in our industry is when friendships are made, they're real.
What does Charlie do today?
She's a singer. So she is actually still she comes to Florida. She ended up marrying a Navy SEAL diver, and he became a dive supervisor, and they have a little farm in Tennessee. And then she comes down to like Boca Raton and Fort Lauderdale, and she sings at like Fishtails in Fort Lauderdale. Like,
yeah, I love that place.
Yeah, and she sings at Vino up in Boca and some other places. She goes up to Saratoga. I mean, the woman has a voice. It just glides up and down a musical scale like a Rolls Royce. It's phenomenal. She's phenomenal.
When you were talking about the way clubs are set up and how, back then there was no social media and this and that. Bobby left Tootsie's at one point. I think this is when you left Tootsie's, and he went to work for Bada Bing. Remember that, Bobby? Which is now today.
I do remember that. Yeah.
What club is that today? Bada Bing, or is it?
Oh, it's gone. It's demolished.
Gone. So tell Angelina how that place was, because Bobby had me come in one night, and I could not believe what they were doing in this place. It was so different.
They ran with the whole concept of the Bada Bing from The Sopranos. They got a big black Cadillac and put it out front. They had the red carpet, all that stuff. They even had bullet holes in the Cadillac just for effect. Inside was like a hard rock cafe of Italian crap. So it was nauseating from stem to stern, but fantastic if you're a mob fan. But it was the entire theme was just mobster vomit all over this club. Pictures of Pacino, pictures of the posters of the Rat Pack, everything you can imagine.
Uh-huh.
But they wore zoot suits at the front door. They probably slipped something into. They probably slipped something into your drink, Plat.
What's that?
What year was that? What year was that, Bobby?
2000, 2004.
Yeah.
Shortly after 2000, so it had to be like 2002 or 3 or 4.
Holy smokes! Yeah.
I mean, I remember Bobby invited me over, and he's killing it. He's in the booth. He's just got a great room going. There's great energy. The girls were all fine as hell, and it was just really organized. And then all of a sudden, the owner's sitting at the bar, and he just like nudges Bobby, and this music plays, and he goes up on stage with a cap gun, and he like did this role playing thing from a scene, like he was role playing scenes from The Sopranos. So like you're sitting there enjoying this hot girl and on stage, and Bobby's got this atmosphere going, and then all of a sudden, it comes to a screeching halt, and here comes the owner on stage, and he's yelling, like no microphone. The guy's just yelling his lines. And then there was like some other employee that was like role playing with him, and then he's shooting this cap gun inside. Like if we did that today, there would be 10 lawsuits. It would just never happen. But back then, you know, the DJ was so important, way more important than they are today, because we would put together these little events, and we would and those are where the best stories come from. I mean, and I remember I probably stole 10 things that Bobby did that night and brought them back to Tootsie's, you know, because it was so creative. And I'm like, we got to start doing some stuff, like not necessarily the stopping the show and shooting a cap gun, but the fact that they ran with a theme and it was something cool. And I wonder if that's how like the new strip club life is going to end up being once we get back. Because we're going to have to get a little more creative to keep people in the seats longer, to put on a show versus the conventional way of just because the girls can't really interact the same way that they're used to interacting. And it's just, I don't know, the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I'd say you're right. So that just reminded me of Lucky Lee, the Russian club owner who comes over with his entourage to Expo. And, you know, I visited their club in Moscow, and he put on, I got to tell you, the show was pretty damn good. You know, he too jumped up on stage. He had a feather boa, and he loves to sing and entertain. And it was like the passion that he has for entertaining, but he surrounded himself with these beautiful women who were flipping flags, and it was really like acrobatics, and it was choreographed. So, you know, one of the things that I've discussed with my friends, and I don't go to clubs too often, but I will occasionally visit, and you know, I look at the changes that have taken place. And, you know, when I was in the industry, there was we went through that phase where we all wore the sequin gowns on the floor, and the only time you took them off is when you were selling a table dance, you know, and that's kind of where I worked in the era I worked. But, you know, now you're seeing really cool, I think, this really cool hybrid club, which is coming along, where people are going, like Tootsie's has the, you know, the sports bar attached to it. And I think that's a really cool concept. And you know, dancers today, they do know how to put on a show. I mean, I have watched some of these dancers, and when they do their pole dancing, it's like, man, girl, you should be in the Olympics, because they are so good at their, and to me, it's art form in a sport. And that gives it right there, you know, some artistic value. I don't care what anyone says. It's not easy to dance in 5 or 6 inch heels and perform those acrobatics on a pole.
No, it's not. Well, listen, Angelina, we're completely out of time. I mean, this is gone. I mean, we're just.
Oh, wow.
At this point, we're just. That's what that's what happens. You know, we get rolling like that, and sometimes the shows just go in their own direction. But I want to thank you so much just for being who you are. And you don't have to take the time out of your lives to placate to us, but you always do. I think of you as family. I think of you. I have so much respect for you being a person that understands our business and fighting constantly for our business, and just being straight up and honest all the time and genuine. I mean, even the last time we got to hang out was at that ACE meeting in Vegas, and we had dinner where I think it was one of the water companies, Fiji Water, took us to dinner, right?
Autumn Valacorsa. Yes.
And I finally got to meet your significant other, and we had the best time, because people don't realize you are such a genuine person, and you don't, just because you've exceeded such heights in our industry, you're always still going to be one of us. And you've never changed that since the day I met you. And I know I can speak, Josh said it earlier and I back that. And I know Bobby and Jake feel the same way. We love you so much, and keep doing what you're doing. We'll keep doing what we're doing, and we are definitely going to get through this. Guys, you got any last things you want to comments or questions or anything you want to say, Bobby?
Don't forget to reach out to someone today. Ask how are you, or you can call Josh right now, 954-748-1000.
One more time, Bobby. What was the number again?
You can call Josh right now at 954-748-1000. That's 954-748-1000.
I guarantee
there. He'll pick up.
Oh, that's great.
I guarantee that's not Josh's number, but I guarantee Bobby has actually investigated.
No, it's actually the number to Hooters and Sunrise, but don't tell anyone.
I knew it. I knew that you looked up that specific number. Hold on.
We need to get the governor's number there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's another thing. We can arrange for the entire strip club to call the governor. I mean, that's easy to do.
Oh, I just think every industry, not just the governor.
All right. Well, listen, we're gonna wrap things up right here and right now with a famous song that our very own Josh Fiore, the Spitfire King, wrote called 6 Feet Apart. So have a great week, everybody. Pick up the phone, ask how people are. How are you campaign starting today with myself, Bobby Mack, Josh, Jake Record, and of course the one and only Angelina Spencer. Hang in there, guys. We love you, and we will see you soon with a lot more information. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah. 6 feet apart, 6 feet